Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Poisoner's Almanac. I am your co-host, Adam. So, it has been an ordeal getting this episode together. We have already recorded it once.
Halfway. I mean,
Yeah. And the internet connection at the beach where you were at completely ruined that episode. It is unusable audio.
you could literally you could hear everything you're saying. I'm behind by at least a minute.
Yep.
It's interesting to watch in a sort of sad, never getting that hour back of my life way. But we think we've fixed the audio here. I'm back. And we're pretty sure we fixed the audio issue in this room. Something about gain.
That's right. The mics
they say no pain, no gain.
Well,
but if you have gain, you also have pain in this case.
Yes. So also we have, I'll probably post a picture, like a wider angle shot on the Patreon of our new podcasting desk, which we just got. We just put it together today and reset up the entire rig.
We call it a podcasting desk. It's probably a desk used for many.
Yeah, it's multi-purpose, but it's made for like two people, and that's what we needed. So now we're using it. Let's jump straight into comments on Spotify in the BBL's filler, Botox, and frauds. We need to talk the dangers of budget cosmetic surgery episode. Sasha says, random autistic confession. I hang out at the graveyard because this is the only place in nature besides some forests that is really actually quiet, and I love to read there and just randomly commemorate people I don't know.
Honestly, she would love the graveyards in South Carolina. There's tons of really old graveyards with huge stone graves and huge white oaks with moss coming off of them. I mean, everything looks haunted over there, but it's just very pretty. But I like graveyards.
The church that was built before the American Revolution down in South Carolina, where I asked you to marry me, has Old Sheldon Church in Yemassee, South Carolina, has an incredible collection of headstones and graves.
It's a ruin in and of itself. The church is barely standing anymore because they burnt it down the one time and then just looted it the second time.
Right.
And I guess at that point, they're like, you know what? Third time's not a charm. Yeah.
That's right. And Kiki Lynette asks on Spotify, was it Stephanie Lang? I did not know who that was, so I looked her up. She is a beauty influencer YouTuber, and she's kind of a jerk sometimes, ?
She can be, yeah. I've only seen her a few times. She pops up when I'm looking at other videos, I think in relation to such, because I was looking at a lot of James Welsh videos, because I like watching him because he's just, he's easy to listen to, and she can be a bit judgy though. I can see that. So yeah, she's got it out for a few certain celebrities. I know that. I was like, why are you obsessed with them?
And then Melanie Regier, she says, Adam, I am Canadian. Haha. My vowel sounds gave me away. That's Melanie, the SLP, who just left us a voicemail recently.
Great.
And then let's see. Oh, this is from the Was It Poison video. Chelsea SP. She says the largest documented case of arsenic poisoning in the U.S. happened in New Sweden, Maine, near my hometown in 2003. Have you heard of this case? You guys should do an episode on it. One victim died and 15 others were hospitalized. Some of the victims have long-term disabilities.
I would definitely have to look at that one.
Great tip, Chelsea. Thank you. Blaufrost says, regarding Hans Hendrik having that kind of name despite being Inuit, Greenlanders are Danish citizens.
Yeah, okay.
Which we all found out together when the United States threatened to invade.
I mean, I knew that already because I was huge into Vikings for the longest time. And then
I never knew that.
There was they traveled because it was a Dane that discovered America before freaking Columbus did, up there, maybe at the top part. But here we are. What was his name? Leif
Leif Erikson. Greenlanders are Danish citizens, with Greenland basically being self-governing. And his Greenlandic name, at least according to Wikipedia, is Sursak. I don't know how to pronounce. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Maybe.
Another fun fact is that the Southern Water Tribe settlement is loosely based on the Franklington expedition,
Like
which I've never heard of.
Water tribe, like from Avatar?
I
Last
don't know.
Airbender?
Another fun fact is that the Southern Water Tribe settlement is loosely based on the Franklington expedition. I don't know if if this is an Avatar: The Last Airbender reference. Well done.
If not, we're just nerds.
It's still great.
That's the first thing I thought of, though.
Yeah. Great comments on Spotify. We got some more from YouTube here. Anissa4660 says, this is the budget plastic surgery episode. This reminds me of something a little off topic. A few years ago, I heard about a new fad where women could strengthen their pelvic muscles by using a Yona egg with Kegel exercises. That's a reference to the pelvic floor musculature. A Yona egg, which was made from crystals and polished smooth, would be inserted, and your Kegels would move it around. The issue is that people would make the egg out of crystals or minerals that dissolved in acid, which is the usual pH balance down there.
It's like a jade egg, like in Goop. What's her name?
That's what it sounds like. Gwyneth Paltrow. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, she talks a lot about those. So we need to get like a Goop subscription just to see. Just to get some stuff to talk about.
We'll get the podcast sponsored by Goop with a series of well-placed emails.
Okay.
And then we will burn that thing down from the inside. Kind of like a Yona egg does. Oh man, I'm going straight to hell for that one.
I've seen like little bits and pieces of the whole Goop culture lifestyle thing, and it's
Goop culture. Goop core.
I laugh, but apparently there are people who take it seriously and who do these things, and it's expensive and it's either useless or can be dangerous. So,
let's see. When they make them out of crystals or minerals, that dissolved in acid, which is the usual pH balance down there, and would be toxic if it got into your body. The main example being malachite. This is all hearsay from my end, but I think it kind of ties into the dangerous trends of doing things that you don't necessarily know the consequences of. But this is a beauty influencer situation. It's the same reason that people go for plastic surgery.
I mean, just if a person tells you to put something in an orifice, just don't do that. Okay. Even when you go to the doctor, and I'm not saying this is right, because what they do is they charge you more because of it. You go to the doctor for an ear cleaning, at least around here. Insurance describes it as surgery because they're putting something in an orifice, and I'm like, well, if that's the case, what about dentistry? So yeah, but they market it as that so they could probably charge you higher for it. But so yeah, I just don't think you should be putting things in your orifices without a doctor's direct.
Also from YouTube, Fluent in Meow says, I love your podcast. I sometimes wish there was a video. I have a better time focusing watching people speak sometimes. Thanks for the upload. I replied, we have a dedicated channel for the video version. And I linked it in the comment, and she replied, no way. This is amazing news for me. Thank you.
I do videos better too.
Yes.
Audio stuff just kind of, I can listen to it for a few minutes, but then, yeah.
And wildly speak, I did not know this, but YouTube is, by the numbers, they have a slight edge in being the most popular podcast platform on the planet. It's not Spotify, which I am shocked by. I thought it would be Spotify for sure, or maybe Apple Podcasts. It is still YouTube, and the vast majority of the time that's because podcasts have a video version. It's all the things that I was learning about expanding a podcast to video is the reason we have a video version. So yeah, here we are. So if you're watching on YouTube, obviously you've already landed at the right place, but we're going to link in the show notes where you guys can find the video version, should you so choose.
Also, somebody gave me this.
Look at that. Hold it up closer to the camera there. Tilt it back, like get it in the light some so people can see that detail. Okay, tell us about it.
Well, it got dropped off actually by a listener who is local.
Yes.
Yes. I hope she,
Tasha.
yeah, I know. I'm like, I hope she doesn't mind me saying her name, Tasha. But she dropped this off because she knows I like ravens and crows and such. And giving Poe vibes, and I think it would be. I thought I had an idea to just. I'm gonna get a little like line where I can like hang up different things people have sent to us because I've gotten a couple of different cards from people, a couple of different like just different little things I'd like to hang up there so you guys could enjoy it too. Yeah. But yeah, it's like a felt. It's pretty nice. She said she got it at like a little market around here, and those markets are really fun to go to. But apparently, the funny story though, she was telling me that they made a lot of different stuff there. They had a lot of little plushies there or something, and like I love stuffed animals, in case you couldn't tell. But there was apparently nothing that would fit my vibe, she said. And so the lady asked her, well, what is your friend like? And she was like, poison. And the lady apparently looked at her like, what? But apparently the area next door, like I think that she said the people next door were, or next door, but next shop over or whatever, like apparently were intrigued. And I guess that's where she found this. But she, she explained a little better. No, she's not like poisoning people. She's, just has an interest in those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Tasha. That's really sweet. When I explain our podcast to strangers, I say, oh, what's your podcast about? Oh, poisons, true crime, history. I never say poisons. I never mention that all by itself.
I mean, I do, but at the same time, I'm used to the reactions I get from people.
You are.
I've had a lot of interesting.
But I am selling this podcast when I tell people about it in public, for sure.
I've had a lot of interesting, like just topics I like to talk about. So I'm kind of used to the looks. But I went through a Starbucks one time. This is a long time ago, years ago, and I had books sitting in my seat.
Yeah, I remember that
and
guy.
This guy was like, he was at the window and he was like, hey, what are those books? Like he was super interested in it. And like, that was, I think right around the time we were thinking about starting this. This has been like a couple of years back. So.
Totally. And I wish I had been there with you to be like, oh, we have a podcast.
Because I always get nervous. I'm like, oh, it's about poisons. Mm-hmm. Don't call the cops on me. Yeah.
I don't have a criminal record, I swear. Story time. I escaped a religious cult 7 years ago. Without going into too much detail here, let me just say it was an extremely difficult journey. My mental health spiraled downhill, and I thankfully had enough presence of mind to seek out a therapist to work through what was going on with me. My therapist helped give me context to all the wild things I had walked away from. He was kind, patient, and guided me through what my new normal might look like. I had never had healthy boundaries in my life. Therapy helped show me that, as a result of being in a cult or a high control group, I had never fully become my own person. It's a shocking thing to learn at the age of 32. I learned how to communicate to the people around me what I was going to do, and more importantly, not do with my time, energy, and resources. BetterHelp is the sponsor of this episode, and they're on a mission to make starting therapy easier. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire, and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. If you're struggling and think you'd benefit from a therapy session, go to betterhelp.com/almanac or choose the Poisoner's Almanac during sign up and get 10% off your first month of therapy. That's going to move us into housekeeping for the old podcast. Be sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening on. Thank you in advance for leaving 5-star reviews. We're watching those pile up on Spotify for one. Thank you so much. Follow us on socials. We got links in the show notes to follow our personal socials and the dedicated podcast socials. Screenshot, if you're listening on a mobile device, screenshot and post it to your socials. Tag us in it. We would love to reshare that and interact with you all. The Patreon is up and running. Link in the show notes to support the show for a single United States dollar per month. Being a supporter of the show unlocks certain perks, which include the option to leave us a voicemail, which we play and react to on here on the podcast. You get weekly bonus episodes that my wife pours her soul into, and you get shouted out on the podcast by name. And those people are as follows. 87 Pens Girl, 71 Mara Santiago, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shetreat, Jay Went, Incan Hafner, Kiri Yorsek, Taya Sunshine, Monique, Shane R., Sue Steves, James Mills, Megan Gowler, Liz B., Woolly Wolf NZ, Mama G, Nicole Rivers, Richard Miyako, Heather Nolan, Kaylee, Sasha Rubel, Maya Showstock, Maggie's Yarm, Ogre the Viking, Lynn Rocket, Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, Nicole Crane, Jefferson Vargas, Carmen Q, Sarah G, Knitting Ninja,
You did it.
Estar, Olive Octopus, Betsy Rich, T-Bug, Christine Moljadi, Morgan Brittingham, Blau Frosch, a.k.a. Clara Jurisons, Vix, Anne Maria, Carl Ziegler Jr., Clyde, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Too Fidgety, Wendy G., Elena M.K., Caitlin Martin, Pungrammed 101, Minna Snoda SPT, Tasha, Stuart Slattery, Simone Valdez, Christian Scradergard, Bonnie, Omadi, Rynel Alara, Kristen Arnold, Aaron Carey, Lynn Simpson, Melissa Emmel, Desiree Davis, Jennifer Ramirez Johnson, Dalek Party, The Warped Witch, Sometimes Jules, Mr. Slave, Dizzy Dancer, Creative Otter, Yadmit, Supergirl Sway, Rachel, Anya Brandt, Ebby, Leah Marie Matson, Lady Digitalis, Jesse, Shay 10, Julia Franzoni, Sparks, Gloria Eichmann, Thomas Huff, From Strings to Things, Soy Kasumi, Jessica Gasparini, Robert Jr., Caitlin and Ron Mack, Donna Lancanese, Lauren Smith, Anna G, Serpentine Fire, Melanie the SLP, Stuart Lee, Solstice, Chris Millanak, Mackenzie Kennedy, and finally Libby. Thank you all for supporting the Poisoner's Almanac. All right, my dear.
Do you like my Cerberus?
I love it. You got to make sure you shout out this new stuff that you got.
Yeah, well, he's a squishable. I love squishables. Like, not sponsored or anything, but I just love squishables. So that's
not
why
sponsored, but we wouldn't mind. Just put it out there.
So if you always see me holding one of their stuffies, it's because I love them. But I also love the Douglas stuffies because they're so soft. He's a little spider. He's got 4 eyes. See his eyes? Sorry for all my arachnophobic. He's a nice spider, I promise. Little guy. He's fluffy. But yeah, he's a Douglas one too. Douglas toys, Douglas stuffy. He's so soft. But yes.
What are we talking about?
So we did an episode a while back that included the possibility of poison being the cause of death for Napoleon Bonaparte and Charles Francis Hall, our Arctic explorer friend. Not really friend, but
say friend.
Victim, I suppose. It was fun, apart from that incessant echo, which we've hopefully fixed now. Sorry again for that.
I did say this before, but guys, Becca worked for like 7 hours to fix that audio.
It bothered me so much.
Oh.
So it bothered me on this end too. Anyway, I do want to talk about some situations that also may have involved poison, but were just super weird. And we don't have any absolute answers really because they were seemingly sudden events that occurred out in nature. And like in one case, there just were no witnesses really that they could turn to ask, hey, did this happen? Did this happen? So I love the idea of hiking and exploring. The idea, right? Like, I wish I could deal with bugs and the temperature extremes. But yeah, here it is overwhelmingly hot. We just had a few heat advisories, which we're used to. I mean, it's summertime. It's Georgia. It's like 98 to 100 degrees, 80% humidity. It just is what it is.
The heat index was like 108.
Yeah.
It was quite toasty.
So, yeah, we had a heat advisory. Other places do too. I mean, California gets pretty hot too. It's just really humid down here too. It's like walking through just a steam room all the time. It's just always, you're just going to be sticky. You're going to be constantly wet. Like your skin's just constantly sticky and moist because humidity. But I'm sure in other places where it's freezing, like that's got to be hard, like to go out and, because I don't, temperature extremes of any sort I can't stand. I have a hard time with that. So I like the idea. Like, yeah, I'd like to go hiking. I would love that. I would probably get lost, let's be honest. We know how I am with geography. But I know the constellations, so watch it be cloudy. Anyway, before I go any further off topic, you know, I used to watch Indiana Jones. Played some Lara Croft Tomb Raider. The, blocky, not really sure. And hey, that was tough. That game was tough because you had to like turn the camera and then do something. And so like by the time you turn the camera and do something, sometimes you're dead. Anyway, but yeah, so the idea is fun. Like, then obviously I mentioned other places are really cold. I've actually heard some horror stories of people going to visit these beautiful places like Norway, Finland, Sweden, Switzerland, like New Zealand. I'd love to go to New Zealand. Like Hobbit houses, I mean, I know that was for the movie, but like just the landscape is like you can go from like mountainous regions to like ocean, beaches, and just be really pretty. So it just looks really pretty. I want to go one day. But like I'm worried about like the trip over there because it's like how long does it take to get over there? Like via airplane? Like 20 something hours?
Oh, it's rough,
It's a
man.
long ways. Anyway, so but people go to these different places to explore more wild areas, but they tend to go unprepared or unexperienced, usually both. And a lot can happen out in the wilderness, and nature should be respected because it can humble you pretty quick and you might not survive that. So I want to first talk about an incident that the other one on this list has actually been likened to, because it wouldn't make sense if I did it the other way around, right? So it only makes sense to start there. And some theories behind this one have been judged to be more likely than others, but I'm going to let you kind of tell me what you think about these said theories. Whether the general public agrees or not, some have been judged to be more likely. So let's discuss the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Dyatlov is actually the name of the last name of the guy who put this together. His name was Igor Dyatlov, and basically he got a group together of ski hikers. It's like hiking, but with skis because it's snowy. So can't exactly just, you get me. So, and they were basically attempting to hike across the northern Ural Mountains area in the then Soviet Union. This was in 1959. Now, Igor Dyatlov, he was a 23-year-old radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, and he put this group together, consisted of like 9 other students and peers, all of whom were experienced grade 2 level hikers with ski experience. So they've done stuff like this before. This is not their first rodeo, as it were, their first ski rodeo, if you will. This was technically a grade 3 hike, and they would receive that certification after the fact by completing this hike. So they were going because it was, fun, and they'd also up their certification with this too. Now, the number of hikers actually grew to 10 in total, and I'm going to tell you the names, but these are, the pronunciation might be bad because I don't speak Russian, or I've never been to Russia, so be patient with me. Yuri Doroshenko, Ludmila Dubinia, Georgy Krivonishenko, Alexander Kolovatov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, Rustem Slobodin, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, Semyon Solotaryov, and Yuri Yudin.
All right.
Okay.
Not bad.
Okay. I could have gotten some of that wrong. It might have sounded good, but I still could have gotten some of it wrong because I don't, this is not a language that's familiar to me. Semyon was the oldest at 38. He kind of got added on towards the end of planning or whatever. He's actually a sports instructor, apparently, but he was also well, experienced and prepared for this sort of thing. But yeah, he was older. Everyone else was in their 20s, so pretty young. The plan was to reach the mountain Otorten. I hope I said that right, in the northern region of Sverdlovsk Oblast. An oblast, from what I've looked up, is a division or a region, so like a Sverdlovsk region of Soviet Union. Okay. They would be passing through the area in February, which is known to add challenges to the already difficult hike. I mean, it's already cold mountainous region. Yeah. February's winter, at least here and there. So yeah. So the plan was approved by the Sverdlovsk City Route Commission on January 8th for them to hike through the area. Another member, as I mentioned, Simeon, he got added on around that time. And then all the hikers, they all had a route book. So they knew where they were going. So I'm just letting you know, they knew the itinerary. They were prepared for this. Mm-hmm. It's not like something they just went off and did without preparing.
They, I'm thinking about, especially if you're in remote areas, like they have checkpoints or call-ins where they'll, like if they miss a checkpoint, someone will come looking for them. Is that how they play it?
Well, he actually, before leaving, Dyatlov actually agreed to send a telegram to the sports club they were a part of. It's part of the institute, the Polytechnic Institute, by February 12th to verify when they'd made it back to Vizhai. This is the last village or inhabited area that far north, basically. So it would be like kind of the last area they could do so. But he was planning on sending a telegram once they got back to that place to let them know, hey, we're good, we're on our way back, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And he said that was going to be around February 12th. So the group started out by train. They arrived at Ivdel in the northern province of the Sverdlovsk region on January 25th, and then they caught a truck to Vizhai, that's the little last little village before, no more civilizations. So,
you say that with the Russian accent.
Did I?
A little bit.
A little bit. I tried. So, yeah, on January 27th, it's my cousin's birthday. They started hiking up towards the mountain Otorten, but by the next day, a member of the group, Yuri Yudin, turned back because he had several health issues. He had arthritis. From one source I read, another source said he had sciatica and a congenital heart defect as well. So he was young. He probably thought, I'm just going to see how it goes. He was, like I said, well prepared, but his lower extremities, from what I gather, were starting to be in pain, and he decided, if I keep going, it's only going to get worse, so I can't do this.
January 27th is the day before our wedding anniversary.
It is. So he turned back due to that, and this likely saved his life.
Yeah, I knew that's what you were going to say.
He would be the only one to make it back. So the rest of the group made it to the highland area to start the climb upward by January 31st. The next day, they started to go through the pass when they got turned around a bit due to some worsening weather conditions, like heavier snow and low visibility and such. And they went further west than they intended, so near this other mountain, actually. They figured this out, but by then they decided to camp instead of moving down a good 1.5 kilometers, which would be almost a mile, to where a more forested area was. It's likely they didn't want to lose the altitude they had gained where they were. So they just decided to set up camp right there on the slope of Kielat Siakol, where they were. Guessing that's how you say the name of that mountain? I'm sorry if I'm wrong. But the name of this mountain is actually pretty interesting. It's actually the transliteration of the Mansi word dead mountain or silent peak.
Okay.
So,
It's not foreboding at all.
no, yeah, no, like I wouldn't.
Only good things happen on the
Right.
silent peak.
Oh, we're going to camp on Dead Mountain? I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that. We don't want to go back to, I don't know, Skull Creek. Anyway, I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious. Now, this decision for them might have been a deadly mistake. So when February 12th passed and there was no telegram from the group, no one really panicked because before Yuri had turned back early, Dyatlov had told him that they would be behind schedule a bit. So they were like, okay, well, he said they're going to be behind, so we'll give it a few days or whatever. Well, by the 20th, family members of the group were pretty worried and they like demanded there be a search because they're like, something's not right. Now, the head of the Polytechnic Institute they were all a part of sent out rescue groups consisting of volunteer students and some teachers. The Soviet police and army would later join in the search with helicopters, better technology, that kind of thing. On February 26th, a rescue team found the damaged tent belonging to the Dyatlov party and it was abandoned. It was a student who first found the tent, and according to him, this is his words, the tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty, and all of the group's belongings and shoes had been left behind. So it was empty of people, but their clothes had been neatly folded and set aside in the tent with their boots, equipment, other supplies. All of that was in there. There was even sliced up food on like a plate, apparently, in the tent as if they were about to eat. So it gets much stranger than this, though.
Weird. It's so weird.
There were footprints in the snow, 9 sets of them, and these were followed by the searchers until they became like snow covered, the footprints, which is about 500 meters, 1,600 feet down. And so there were 9 sets of footsteps. This would line up with the amount of hikers that had been camped there. The footsteps led down to a wooded area about 1.5 kilometers northeast on the other side of the pass. So when they investigated this wooded area, they found the remains of a small campfire under one of the large trees, these large, like, Siberian pine trees they have out there. There, they also found the bodies of Georgy Krivonoshenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They were not wearing any shoes and were only dressed in their underwear, basically. The search team also noticed that the tree they were under had some broken limbs near the bottom and up as far as 5 meters, as if someone had tried to climb the tree. Upon closer inspection between this tree and the destroyed campsite, 3 more bodies were found wearing little clothing like those under the tree. Now, these were the remains of Igor Dyatlov, Nenada Kolmogorova.
You're doing pretty good so far.
Well, thank you.
Gotta say.
Thank you. And Rustem Slobodin. And it looked like they were trying to make it back to the original campsite, like they were climbing up towards that area. It would take over 2 months to find the bodies of the other 4, basically.
Why were they not wearing barely anything? It's so risky to do that.
We're going to go over some theories about that as well. While searching for the remaining hikers, a legal inquest under prosecutor Lev Ivanov was started to examine the bodies in search of a cause of death. A team of medical examiners found no injuries that could have led to their deaths. Slobodin had a slight crack in his skull. It wasn't serious, though. Wouldn't have led to his death necessarily. And they decided to list the cause of death for each of them as hypothermia. Krivonoshenko, one of the hikers found under the tree, had 3rd-degree burns on his shin and foot. And the team also found a bit of flesh in his mouth that appeared to have come from his knuckle as if he'd bitten it off. Toxicology tests were done. Witness testimony was taken about the group. Diagrams and maps were made of the scene, and evidence was gathered and forensically analyzed. So they, got all of this stuff together. The tent and its contents were actually helicoptered out of the mountains and set up again inside the police station to kind of so they could kind of analyze it there, examine how it was. How they try to put it up exactly the way it was when they found it, basically. And um, there they figured out that there were these cuts in the tent, and they found out through a seamstress that was actually helping the police out with something different, that the cuts had to have been made from the inside. So somehow these cuts were being made from the inside as if they were trying to get out of the tent that way. It's coming from inside the tent. But yeah. Now they finally found the rest of the hikers in May of 1959. I say they, but it was actually an indigenous Mansi hunter and his dog that found them. These four were found in a ravine about 75 meters, about 246 feet further into the wooded area from the tree that the first two were found at. And they were under about 4 meters, about 13 feet of snow. Now, the Mansi hunter found this sort of iced in, basically, and there was like clothing strewn about, like just debris, like that didn't look natural, obviously. And so he, I guess, called it in. And the rescue workers came and recovered the bodies of Alexander Kolovatov, Nikolay Thibault-Brignol, and Semyon Zolotaryov, and Ludmila Dubinya. Now, 3 of the 4 of these were better dressed than the others had been, and there were signs that some clothing of those who had maybe died first had been removed for use by the others so that they could try to keep warm after they had left the tent. So, like I said, it gets weird. So yeah. Now, Dubinya was wearing Krivonishenko's burned, torn trousers. He was one of the guys. He was one of the men found under the tree. He had the burned shin and foot. So, I mean, he could have had that on, and maybe she took it maybe after he died. That's what they're speculating. Like maybe she got this after the fact. Her left foot and shin were wrapped in a torn jacket. Now, 3 of these hikers had significant injuries that likely resulted in their deaths. Thibault-Brignol had a skull fracture so severe that there were pieces of bone in his brain. Zolotaryov and Dubinya had suffered crushing injuries to their chests. The autopsy report noted a massive hemorrhage in the right ventricle of Dubinya's heart. The medical examiner said that the damage was similar to what is typically seen as the result of an impact of an automobile moving at high speed. This would have killed them pretty quick, like as soon as they suffered these injuries. So, however, the bodies had no external wounds associated with the bone fractures, as if they'd been subject to this high level of pressure, not so much blunt force trauma, like as being struck with something. Both Zolotaryov and Dubinya's eye sockets were empty, and Dubinya was missing her tongue. Now, this was very likely a post-mortem thing, though, like scavengers, that kind of thing. The 3 hikers with such physical damage were listed as having died from compelling natural forces. So it's just a vague way of saying they got hit with something, you know. Now, those investigating the scene of the destroyed tent, like I said, they found these cuts. And so like, why would they, I guess, why use a knife to cut it open? They must have been, it's almost as if they were trapped and thought they were trapped inside. And then, like, why just remove their clothing and boots and abandon them along with their food and equipment, just run off into this harsh and freezing wilderness? And like I said, some of the clothing might have been removed by others after those particular hikers were dead, but like a lot of them were half dressed and were not wearing boots. So also, how were some killed in other ways than the others? How or why did they separate?
I can't make heads or tails of it so far.
Now, in one of the first theories was that perhaps the native Mansi people had found them and attacked them because they believed they were encroaching on their lands. This was ruled out pretty quick after interrogations with some Mansi peoples, and also just realizing there had only been 9 sets of footprints, no others around. There were no signs of like hand-to-hand combat around here. No signs of a struggle, really. So, I mean, unless you count like the messed up tent, but So, Also, the nature of the injuries for those who did suffer them, they just didn't match with hand-to-hand combat or a fight with another person, really. The Mansi people are reindeer herders as well. They're not, they're pretty chill. They don't have anything against these people, or wouldn't have had. Now, hypothermia does seem to be the only cause of death found for all but 3 of the hikers, and there is some evidence to support it. Hypothermia occurs when the body's core temperature falls below 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 degrees Celsius, if you will. At this point, the heart, nervous system, and other organs can't work as well as they usually do for obvious reasons. Left untreated, hypothermia can cause the heart and respiratory system to fail and eventually can lead to death. Now, I've heard of stories, like miraculous stories, of people getting like just basically frozen very quickly, like way lower temperature than this, and surviving because like it's almost as if they were preserved. They were cooled so fast and then brought back with proper medical attention. It's rare, but there's been a few cases, and it's interesting with like without brain damage at the end of it. Like
That's crazy.
Those are some interesting cases themselves. Now, but symptoms of hypothermia can include shivering, slurred speech, mumbling, slow and shallow breathing, weak pulse, clumsiness or lack of coordination, drowsiness, confusion, memory loss, hallucination, loss of self-awareness, and loss of consciousness. It may start out mild, then gradually worsen, and it's considered a medical emergency. There's also a symptom of severe hypothermia known as paradoxical undressing, in which those experiencing severely low body temperatures actually start to feel as if they're hot. So they begin to remove their clothing. Now, this may be caused by the hypothalamus malfunctioning, as the body's sort of shutting down. And this is the part of the brain that regulates body temperature. Or it also can be a loss of what's called vasomotor tone. This is what balances dilation and constriction of blood vessels. And so, like, it can lead to the blood vessels in the extremities relaxing, releasing heat all of a sudden. That's just a theory behind this particular symptom. But most of the hiking party was, like I said, only half dressed. They were basically in their undergarments. They weren't wearing any shoes. At least, like, one had like a felt booty on. It just looked like they left in a hurry, sort of.
Sorry, I mean like a slipper.
Stuff. They didn't bring their stuff with them. Yeah, yeah. So
hero's duty. Sorry.
I said booty. Okay.
Right.
So maybe this is why they were unclothed out in the cold. I mean, the temps where they were would have been negative 25 Celsius to negative 30 Celsius. This is about negative 13 Fahrenheit to negative 22 Fahrenheit. And it was snowing pretty heavily. Like there was a storm that had moved in. But like, why leave the tent in the first place where they had the equipment to stay warm and fed and sheltered at least from the wind and snow? You know, their clothes were there, their shoes were there. Like how did the tent become damaged? How did 3 members end up with fatal injuries and no obvious external signs of such? Like, how did they end up where they ended up? How did they get out there?
I can't put it together. It's so wild. It's got to be some measure of altered mental status for some reason, some sort of encephalopathy.
Their brains are just inflamed at the top of this mountain.
I don't know. Trying to cut your way out of a tent. Taking off all your clothes when it's minus 15 degrees outside, and just they're all experienced hikers and they separate from one another. It just nothing adds up. Nothing.
So I'm going to go over what was known by the end of the investigation and inquest, because it kind of just ended suddenly May of that same year, basically the same month that those other bodies were found. Now, it was reported that 6 of the hikers had died of hypothermia, while 3 had died of fatal injuries. There was no evidence of any other people nearby on the mountain, the pass, or anywhere nearby, at least for like 30 miles, I believe. The tents had been ripped open from within. The victims had died 6 to 8 hours after their last meal. That would be according to the autopsies. Evidence found at the campsite revealed that all of them had left on foot of their own accord, and they had all walked, not run from the site, which you can tell from like the stride. It could not have been the Mansi people or any other human attack, as the injuries that were suffered could not have been caused by such, especially without more soft tissue injuries, at least, you know. Now, a laboratory found that several items emitted unnaturally high levels of radiation. A radiological expert testified that because the bodies had been exposed to running water for months, these levels of radiation must originally have been many times greater. So, according to him, and we'll come back to that part in a minute. Apart from what I have already mentioned about the injuries, 3 of them sustained, there was no documentation released regarding the internal organs or tissues of those that had died. So there wasn't any more information released on like the shape that they were in, basically. Since there was no criminality found, the inquest, as I said, was just kind of ended in May of 1959. They were just like, they just shut it down. And the files, pictures, and journals that were recovered that were associated with this incident were sent to a secret archive.
Gotta love the Russian government.
The area was also closed off to other travelers for like years after this area that they had been found or had gone to, you know. So obviously there's still a lot of questions regarding what happened and how these hikers died, etc. As such, there have been many theories over the years since. So let's go through those. Some are more out there than others, but there are some that seem out there, but are also like, I mean, kind of fits. Like, so yeah, I mentioned radiation on one of the hikers' clothing. With this little bit of information, and obviously, like the obvious mystery of the whole thing, like there were a lot of people who were starting to wonder if these deaths were covered up by the Soviet government after some secret weapons testing disaster, which is not that far-fetched when you consider how secretive the Soviet Union had been about a lot of experiments and accidents. I mean, we've covered Chernobyl, you know. So, and there's other ones we haven't covered that we'll probably go into in the future. So, yeah. There was, however, some explanation for the radiation in this case. One of the members of the group had apparently been living in the contamination zone of the recent Kishtim disaster, a nuclear incident 2 years prior, and another had helped with the cleanup of that same disaster. So they may have had some leftover contamination, maybe.
These are both members of the party?
Yeah. So like, the radiation was found on clothing, and so like they're saying that since they came from this area, their bodies are still kind of radiating this out, and their clothing would have had it on there too. So, or their clothing had it on there because it also was from this particular place.
Yeah.
So, another theory has been poisoning by carbon monoxide from their heating device. I'm not sure what device this is that people are mentioning because I didn't find what they had or any sort of like device like that, but hey, maybe it just wasn't listed where I was looking. Methanol poisoning due to bad alcohol ingestion leading to confusion and them having leaving the tent without clothing. Like, but they're experienced hikers. They would probably know the effects of alcohol with altitude sickness and cold weather, like it, you know, hypothermia, that kind of thing. I doubt, you know, if they're that experienced. They were having a good time. I mean, they had cameras on them with pictures, like black and white pictures. And you can actually look these up. They've been made public now, but and they seem to have a jolly old time, you know, but they're not like, you know, playing drinking games on this mountain, you know. So I just don't see that being the case. Also, poisonous hallucinogenic mushrooms that were said to be hung from trees by the Mansi people. That's another sort of theory. Now, the first two that I mentioned, carbon monoxide, methanol, they were ruled out pretty early on, and then talks with the Mansi people later revealed that they had not hung any sort of mushrooms in that area. They would hang mushrooms to dry, but like I don't think at this elevation they would be doing that. They would have had to pick something like that up further down before they made it this far, and that's just not. They already had food, so that doesn't really make much sense to me either. Also, if they're experienced hikers, they know a little bit about foraging, I would think, like not to touch certain things. Just what I would think. Others theorize that perhaps the group had accidentally been within target range of a military exercise involving parachute bombs. Now, in this case, the group would have panicked and left the tent quickly without time to grab clothing. But I would think they would be wearing as much clothing as possible, even in the tent, like unless it was wet or something. Like maybe they took it off to dry, but it was like folded and it was nicely arranged in the tent. But
That's creepy. I'm just like they didn't, either it's premeditated or they didn't see any of it coming. It's one of the two.
Although they explain this, those who favor this theory explain this with the idea that the bodies were moved after the fact, and they used like some of the hikers like burns and markings due to livor mortis. Like they say, like, oh, this body's been messed with or moved after the fact. Like they were trying to use stuff like that, because like with the blood pools or whatever, you can tell if a body's been moved from a scene that it was originally at, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. Now the problem here is, how would they have done so without leaving any signs that they were there, like footprints? They had only found enough sets to be the hikers, and if they had been dragged, this too would have been apparent. I mean, if there's footprints in the snow, there'd be drag marks as well, right? It turns out, however, that this whole parachute bomb testing thing was actually a thing, and according to military records, it had happened in this area around the time they would have been there. Now, parachute mines detonate while still in the air rather than when they strike the Earth's surface. And they produce signature injuries similar to those experienced by the hikers. So you have the heavy internal damage, but relatively little external damage. The theory coincides with reported sightings of glowing orange orbs floating or falling in the sky in the general vicinity of the hikers, and was allegedly photographed by them. I think I sent you this weird photo.
Yeah.
That people say is like, see, that proves it, right? But it doesn't really prove anything, but I figured I'd show you.
Yeah.
Show you
this
anyway.
Is like just a random, it looks like it's an accidental exposure.
So, yeah, basically they're trying to say that potentially military aircraft or descending parachute mines, like this is what that is. Or it could be also, as we'll go into in a little bit, UFOs.
Real fun fact. So I've learned a lot about William Branham, who is basically the most famous post World War II healing evangelist, and he started a cult and eventually proclaimed himself to be the coming of Christ. But before he died in a car accident in 65, I think it was. But one of his, pieces of lore was a photo that was taken of him preaching at one of his crusades. And there appears to be this halo of light around his head. And it was captured in a photograph. It's not a halo. It's just a random overexposure of, a flash of light. Mm-hmm. Anybody who knows film photography, they know that's what that is.
See this? That's evidence. And
ghost.
People are like, well, no, that's actually this. Like I said, I'm not superstitious.
I'm a little stitious.
I mean, I don't mean I'm going to go like try something, right? I'm not trying things.
It's always white people in the woods trying stuff.
I'm not going to go jump in Lake Lanier. I'm not going to go if something's haunted. I'm not going to be like, let's go in there. Let's go mess with them.
There's a guy going viral right now
do that.
on TikTok who is simply reenacting cave divers, social media videos, but he's doing it in his living room, and he's doing it with like some blankets and the pillows from his couch, and he's disappearing in the cracks between his pillows, and he's like exhaling all the breath from his lungs so that he can fit through the hole. Like it's the most just claustrophobic nightmare.
It makes me think of the Nutty Putty cave incident. We could talk about that. It scares me. I will never be in one of those places.
No. Don't do that.
No, thank you.
And the comments, of course, are hysterical. One of the comments I saw was like, it's always some guy who has like 2 kids and one on the way. They're diving in caves like this.
The next bonus episode should probably be, don't go there. We're going to talk about places you probably shouldn't go. unless you are very, even then, just why?
What about the flying squirrels? The guys that jump off the mountains, with the squirrel suit and fly like that?
You're asking for it.
Those are crazy.
What if you go smack?
I don't know.
I'm scared of
how that
heights
works,
too. So
man.
I'm not a what are they called? The junkies.
Adrenaline junkies. Mhm.
That's not me. No, I get fight or flight. I don't get excited. It's just not me. I get fight or flight in the grocery store.
I get insurance premiums. So no, thank you.
So yeah, that picture, like I said, I'll let you know exactly where that picture actually came from in just a second. But along with this theory, some hikers about 31 miles away, 50 kilometers away, south of where Dyatlov's group was, actually reported seeing orange orbs floating or falling in the sky that night. Others from the town of Ivdel and surrounding areas reportedly saw the same or something similar in the area between February and March of 1959. Some of these witnesses were actually in the military or meteorological services, but it's also important to note that many of these reports came years later, and there were no such sightings listed in documentation from the investigation in 1959. Not saying that that's like, I mean, there could be a lot of things they didn't mention, but you know what I mean? Like, so still in 1990, Lev Ivanov, who had retired from his prosecutor job, he's the one who headed up the investigation back then. He wrote an article claiming that he had not been allowed to include his own views of what had happened in the 1959 report. Now, his views are definitely a little more out there. They involve UFOs. Okay.
I forgot this was actually the investigator.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying impossible, but there just isn't evidence of such.
I am. Please stop.
Like, it's just, there's no evidence of such. So it's like,
can't we do better than UFOs? Like, can't we? Don't we have something better? It's like, have you ever seen Peter Jackson's King Kong, that movie?
Yeah.
Okay. Andy Serkis is in that movie as well. And at one point he goes, there's only one thing that could have made these footprints. The abominable snowman.
Glad you mentioned him because we're going to come to him in a minute. So, but yeah, I'm not making fun of anybody who's into UFOs and stuff. Go for it. I have no problem believing in like bacteria or life in general being found on another planet.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would look anything like us though. That just seems a little bit too coincidental to me.
Yeah, like a straight carbon copy, like bipedal, whatever.
Or anything. I don't know. That's another thing I don't really think about that much. I just don't care. Like if aliens could land tomorrow, and I'd be like, okay. I mean, 2025.
all the millennials would be like, I mean, whatever.
I honestly, at this point, I don't think I'd care.
We would be excited. We would be excited because it means maybe that meeting that we never want to go to will be canceled this time.
Is there going to be free healthcare after this? Maybe. I don't know.
Will there be student loan debt forgiveness after
president?
the aliens?
All right. Anyway.
They will declare they're taking over our world and we'll be like, as long as you forgive the student loans, I mean, that's kind of, we're fine.
Look, I mean, we're tired. So
if you give us nap time every day?
Or they'd come and be like, let's not land here. Anyway, so
scope it out and be like, actually.
Now, yeah. So, like I said, there's just not evidence of such in this case or otherwise. So, now the article titled "The Enigma of the Fireballs." This is what Ivanov apparently wrote about in 1990. He basically said that the skiers had been killed by heat rays or balls of fire associated with UFOs. But why? They just come over here and they're just going to play paintball with fire? Like, get them.
Cast fireball like it's a D&D turn? Do you even know how many magic points it costs to cast fireball at every turn?
I don't have that many spell slots. So, yeah. So in his original examination of the scene, Ivanov found trees with unusual burn marks, which he believed confirmed that some kind of heat ray, say, or a powerful force whose nature is completely unknown to us at least, acted selectively on specific objects. So I feel like that's very vague in terms of evidence, but okay. Now, he referred to the last picture, the one that you put up a minute ago, from the film taken from Krivonashenko's camera, but according to other sources, this photo was actually a technological shot taken in the lab before the film was removed. So it wasn't even taken by any of the hikers. It was taken probably just to make sure that the camera was functional, that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't work in a photo lab, but it was taken after it was removed from the mountain. So it basically looks like a big blob of white and black nothing to me. I mean, but in 2008, a 3-foot-long piece of metal was found in the area, according to the Dyatlov Foundation, who took possession of it. I guess they can do that. The metal is apparently a part of a Soviet ballistic missile. Okashev, Ivanov's supervisor in the prosecutor general's office at that time, gave an interview to a newspaper in 2013 in which he recalled finding it suspicious when he and his colleagues were instructed to test recovered items for radiation. He sent a letter to his superiors asking why radiation was even relevant. Because, I mean, you'd want to know, like, is there something I should be aware of? Like, should my team be, I don't know.
Does Russia have yet another nuclear disaster?
Should we be wearing certain things?
Yeah.
Sure. But in response, the deputy prosecutor general just kind of met with them and was like dodging questions about weapons testing and basically just ordered them to tell people that the deaths were accidental. So stop asking questions, just tell them it's accidental. Now, other theories related to this one in the military sense involve the KGB or even the CIA in the mountains of the Soviet Union, I guess. Now, some of the locals have believed that the group stumbled upon an area where military testing was being done, parachute bombs or not, and that they were injured in the process and or killed by those involved, like so they wouldn't say anything, I guess. Another less popular theory is that they were killed by American mercenaries that just happened to be there in the area, which doesn't make much sense to me. Why would they be there? Even Yuri Yudin, this is the hiker that had left the group days after starting the trip for his health issues, he said that he believed his teammates had been taken from their tent at gunpoint and murdered. This was in 2013, however, when he stated this, and this wasn't long before his death. I don't know what his mental status was like, or if this is something that this is the way he processed, what happened, I don't know. Now, those attached to the KGB theory have focused on some of the team being members of the KGB, specifically Zolotaryov. I believe he was the oldest. He was the older guy, and possibly 2 other members who were on a secret mission to meet with CIA operatives in the area and give them misinformation, like purposefully. According to this theory, the CIA operatives killed all of them and covered it up on this mountain.
If they found the footprints of the hikers, how do they not find the footprints of
exactly? Well, that too, but like I would think it would be a lot messier too. Like, that's a big job to cover up. This again, like I said, it feels difficult to believe because, like we said, the scene showed no such evidence of others being present. Also, why would CIA operatives be out there at all? On this mountain. So yeah, military testing, aliens, CIA, KGB. We can't leave out Yetis. Okay. Well, a Yeti.
You mean like the Yeti cooler or okay?
The abominable snowman. Of course, the first thing I see is that like claymation abominable. I can't even say abominable. Abominable.
Abominable.
Okay. Snowman. Yes. From like the Christmas movies or whatever.
Oh yes. I want to be a dentist.
Dentist. Of course, like he was like a friendly abominable. So he's not really abominable.
The snowman ended up having a tooth that he needed work on.
He was just angry. He was just in pain. Shoot. I get mad too if I'm in pain. Anyway, Yetis. Yetis are like the cold version of the Bigfoot, right? Sort of.
Yes, an Arctic Bigfoot.
Arctic Bigfoot.
Mhm.
Yeah, or Sasquatch, I guess. Anyway, so the most popular theory for a while has actually been that a natural disaster of some sort occurred. Now, this does have a higher chance of happening than, say, like aliens or Yetis.
Aliens. I just see that History Channel.
History Channel basically just became reminiscent of the Sci-Fi Channel, if you think about it.
It's too much.
I used to love the History Channel too, and they'd have like all the history stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, now some of these theories are still a little out there and not believed by everyone. Okay, one theory in this realm is that of what is called catabolic wind. I think I said that right. These are also known as fall winds. These are a thing. These are violent bursts of air that are driven downward by gravity as air closer to the ground just cools really quickly. It becomes much more dense. It flows basically with gravity like a river would. So it's air, but it's very dense. It can be damaging. It can be very dangerous. This kind of event is considered rare, but it does happen more often in cold/freezing environments or higher altitude environments. So like places like Antarctica, Greenland, they call it the Pittorak there, which basically means that which attacks you, which kind of gives you some context, I guess, of what they think of that. Parts of northern France, where they call it the Mistral wind, and also Croatia, even in California as well, making the Santa Ana winds through the Sierra Nevada mountains. Now, these dense winds can be really fast as well. They can reach 50 to 80 meters per second. That's 180 to 288 kilometers per hour, or 111 to 178 miles per hour. Yeah. Now, such winds as these were said to be the cause of death for 8 hikers in Sweden in the Anaris Mountains. Of course, in that case, there was a survivor, though he was severely injured, but he was able to tell them that story. So, like, they kind of knew, like, this is what happened. Here we don't have anyone to say what happened. So those that favor this theory argue that the hikers would not have been able to stay in the tent. They would have needed to evacuate it relatively quickly. They also would have thrown snow on top of the tent, likely to keep it from flying away. Apparently, a flashlight was also found on top of the tent. And they think that this would have been intentional to kind of help them find their way back after, like, leaving, maybe to seek shelter in that wooded area below. It's believed in this theory that they may have attempted to build shelters, and the one above the 4 found later, the ones that they found after a few months, collapsed, causing the injuries seen in the 3 of them, 3 out of the 4 of them. The others would have died of hypothermia trying to make it back to the tent. So the theory actually does fit a lot when you think about it, but we can't know for sure. Another theory in line with the whole natural disaster theme is that of infrasound waves from winds moving around the mountain. They were on the slope of, creating this phenomenon known as a Kármán vortex street. Not sure why it's a street. Kind of bothers me because I don't know why it's a street. But so, like, Carmen San Diego winds. I don't know. Where in the world is Carmen San Diego? But yeah, Kármán vortex street. Now, this theory was favored by Donnie Eichar in his 2013 book Dead Mountain, the untold true story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, which seems kind of presumptuous to me.
You can't prove that it's true, but whatever.
So, yeah, he explains here that the infrasound caused the hikers to have panic attacks. Like, all of them? Like, they all started, I mean, maybe it was like a mass panic thing. I don't know. It was not, it wasn't Disney World up there. So, I mean, I've definitely had a panic attack at Disney World before.
let the
Bad
reader
reference
understand.
on my part. But yeah, he suggests that they left the tent in this panic state. They left their clothes, shoes, and supplies behind, and they might have, like, come out of this sort of panicked state further down the slope, but with it being dark, they couldn't find their way back. 3 of them, those with the fatal injuries, he suggested could have fallen into the ravine area and hit the rocks below. So that's his take. And if you're like, wait, what the heck is a Kármán vortex street? And I've got you because, yeah, maybe. I looked it up because I too was like, and I found out that this is a subject of fluid dynamics in which a repeating pattern of swirling vortices caused by the separation of flow of a fluid around blunt bodies, the fluid in this case being this dense air or water vapor from the clouds acting like a fluid, I suppose, and then the blunt body being the mountain, so it going around. You can actually see this effect with clouds around mountainous regions. It's kind of more rare below, like on Earth, than it is. You can see it in space typically with, from above. But so, yeah, echolalia wind, that's what I call it. But it can cause panic somehow. So apparently this effect can cause a singing or vibrating or humming sound. So maybe it freaked them out. I'm not sure, but I would think experienced hikers and mountain climbers would be kind of able to collect themselves knowing how the wind and such just kind of operates around landscapes like this. And know not to panic because that can only make matters worse. All right, let's talk about one more theory, and it has sort of been decided to be the most plausible by authorities at this time, but even it has problems. An avalanche.
No. Next theory.
According to this theory, the group would have either felt snow coming at them or believed an avalanche was coming, and therefore fled the tent quickly, leaving everything behind for fear of being buried in the snow. They would have fled to the wooded area, likely, as trees were better protection against incoming snow. They might have gotten separated into 2 to 3 groups in the dark, but if it's dark, how do they know where the woods are at the same time? I'm thinking, like, anyway, maybe I don't know. I was gonna say maybe the moon was out, but it wasn't. It was a snowstorm going on. So whatever. So while one group of 2 was under the tree and they made a fire, the 3 found between there and the tent tried to go back for their supplies. These groups froze to death. In this theory, the ones with injuries found later were hit and buried in an actual avalanche. I mean, it's better than like the Yeti theory, but it feels all over the place to me because so they ran from a possible avalanche, got lost from each other, okay? But then some were hit by another actual avalanche further down in a different location.
No.
Now, others that question this theory are typically skeptical of there being an avalanche in that area at all.
Yeah.
Over 100 expeditions have traveled this area with no indication of there ever being or having been an avalanche. Updated physics and a review of the area has shown it to be an unlikely place for an avalanche. Also, the conditions of the snow shelf in February would not have been conducive for an avalanche. There wasn't melting snow or any sort of disturbance really that they found that could have led to this. So, had there been an avalanche, it's not likely it just came to the tent. The tent and hikers likely would have been buried or swept away, but they found the tent with some snow on top of it, but it wasn't covered or, you know what I mean? Like it could be seen.
Nah.
The footprints leading away from the tent showed they had walked away at a normal pace, not fled for their lives. Also, the footprints still would have been there if there had been an avalanche. Like,
Absolutely not.
I just don't think. Finally, Dyatlov was an experienced skier, and the much older Zolotaryov was studying for his master's certificate in ski instruction and mountain hiking. I mean, neither of these 2 men would likely have camped anywhere in the path of a potential avalanche. Like they wouldn't have, no. Especially in the middle of a snowstorm where it's already kind of dangerous. And like, made me think of that scene from Legally Blonde. Like, I feel like only my mind can go here, but you know, where she's like, I don't think she could have done it because exercise gives you endorphins. Endorphins make you happy, and happy people just don't kill their husbands, right? It's like these 2 men,
airtight.
These 2 men, like they knew what they were doing. They wouldn't just leave their tent. They wouldn't just camp there if there was going to be an avalanche. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. So, a review of the evidence from the 1959 investigation in 2015 and through 2019, they kind of went through this whole, like, let's look at this again. It argued in favor of the avalanche theory, stating that the conditions were harsh that night with a snowstorm and high-speed winds and freezing temperatures. I mean, okay, but it's a mountain in northern Russia in February. So kind of always like that. At least, in February. Now, they discount the experience of those making this hike, I think, and believe the 3 with injuries died after trying to construct a shelter and then fell into a hole near a stream, basically. And they say that it would not have looked like an avalanche had taken place because the snow would have settled and fresh snowfall would have covered it up. But then why were there footsteps?
Doesn't add up.
Now, in 2021, a team of physicists and engineers did demonstrate using a numerical model how even a small shift of the snow slab where they were could have caused injuries. But there again, it's a model, not a real event in real conditions with real people. And they went on to say, we can't prove this happened. We can just say it could have caused these injuries. But we can't say that that's what happened. They said that in the reports.
Yeah, it's still just a bizarre situation. I don't know. There's no clear, sometimes there's cases where like CSI can get involved and like, because of the nature and direction of blood spatter, you can tell.
Yeah, there's no blood in this case.
There's no forensic breadcrumb trail that's
they can
leading
say
you.
Is there's no sign of anybody else having been there. Something must have happened for these people to go out.
Yeah.
Whether they were spooked or something happened mentally with all of them. Something happened.
Yeah.
We don't know what. We know kind of how they died, but how they got there to begin with, not being clothed.
Sure. That's the thing, is they're also violating every safety measure they know of.
And like you could say, well, the paradoxical undressing. Yeah, but they were in a tent. They had their clothing. Did they get so cold even in the tent that they just, you know what I mean?
Impossible to ignore. Provoke them to get out of the tent.
Yeah. So what do you think is closest? Was it an avalanche?
Oh, man. Definitely the UFOs.
Did they drink bad alcohol and go mad and freeze to death? Did they stumble into a military exercise? I don't know. The katabatic winds.
I feel like, honestly, I'll tell you what. This is tinfoil hatting a little bit. I could see them having somehow linked up with CIA or some other intelligence agency from a foreign power. That'd be the perfect place to meet up with somebody because there's nothing out there.
Really? You think they'd be out there?
I mean, there's easier ways to do it. It's the most plausible out of the ones I've heard.
I don't know. The katabatic winds one was pretty good.
No. I just can't see collective mass hysteria because of.
But it wasn't hysteria. It was them trying to make sure their tent didn't go away and then losing where they were.
It just they're so hodgepodge all over the place with different, I don't know.
I mean, I'm not into the Yetis alien stuff.
No.
And I feel like the radiation stuff has been kind of settled. I don't really see because I feel like you'd find radiation in other places too.
The most plausible for me is that they were rendezvousing with some sort of foreign actor.
Oh, you're taking the whole KGB CIA route.
Yes, 100%. I mean,
now,
there's still
not unlikely that they would have had any kind of, because like a lot of people had ties to KGB back then. So
that's right. See, and this is 59. This is not, the mid 90s. Like, there's a KGB guy in charge of Russia right now.
I don't know. I'm still skeptical about that one, but.
What do you mean? Of that theory?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it sounds more like a movie.
It does. It does. But if something goes wrong, they, again, I know we're talking about footprints and all this other stuff and cause of death. But I don't know. It's the one that fits the best in a completely absurd situation. That's all I'm doing. Your question was, which one sounds most plausible? That's the one. I am drug-free.
I mean, I'm just, it's a question. I think people believe different things about it. So I just wanted to get your take on it.
Sure.
We don't know. We don't know.
That's the one for me. And it's probably because I'm honestly, in my mind, I'm picturing Agent Steckner from Narcos. He was the CIA guy on the ground in Medellin, Colombia, during when the Pablo Escobar thing came to a head, and etc. And he honestly was the creepiest character in that show, because he had this one bit of dialogue where he was like, yeah, the CIA has plans for this place. That was his take on the entire drug war. I'm talking about, like, not today's drug war. This is Pablo Escobar. You know what I'm saying? This man's a gangster. And it was just weird the way his whole take was like, yeah, the CIA's, we're here because we have plans for this place. And I'm like,
doesn't the CIA believe in aliens?
I don't know what the CIA believes, but it just
They say they do. A lot of them do.
Well, yeah. His vibe was like, oh, you're a chaotic neutral out here, aren't you?
I always play chaotic neutral characters in my games.
Same.
Before I gave you all of these delicious details of this case, I mentioned that there were no doubt. I mentioned that there was another case. Technically, there's a couple of cases that have been seen as similar in terms to the mystery behind them, to the point where they're like, it's this country's Dyatlov Pass, or it's this city's Dyatlov Pass, or whatever. Like it's just that sort of serious mystery type effect.
It's the term used to describe.
Yeah, it's just kind of it's become sort of likened to that particular mystery. So I'm only going to discuss one for now because it's all the time I have to do. Anyway, this is the Khamar-Daban incident, but has been called Buryatia's Dyatlov Pass. I looked up that pronunciation.
You did?
I hope I got it. I did my best. This is also in Russia. It'll be 1993. Actual Russia, not Soviet Union Russia, but here we are. So yeah, this occurred in 1993 when an experienced hiking instructor, Ludmila Korovina, led a group of younger students on a hike to Khamar-Daban, which is a mountain range in southern Siberia in the Republic of Buryatia, Russia. This was a popular hiking spot, and she planned for her and 6 of her students to go. Now, forgive me again for mispronouncing any names. These students were Alexander, known as Sasha Krysin, who was 23, Tiana Filipinko, 24, Nis Shvakin, who was 19, and Tina Valia, is what she sometimes went by, Utochenko, she was 17, Victoria Zelesova was 16, and Timur Babanov, was 15, which is awfully young.
Mercy.
Yeah. Now, the teacher, Korovina, she was 41. She had a previous experience hiking in this area, and the students had trained with her for the trip. Still, 15 is pretty young for, I guess he was with other, a whole group, but still, it's pretty young to me to do this sort of thing. So they didn't go without some knowledge of the area or of the wilderness in general. Still, like I said, the youngest of the group was 15. The others weren't that much older. So this, like I said, seems awfully young. But what do I know? I don't do this sort of thing. They traveled up to Irkutsk, Russia. Did I say it wrong?
No, it's going to make me laugh every time we say it.
Irkutsk. It's fun to say. Irkutsk, Russia, via train in August of 1993. Korovina's daughter was also leading a hiking group in the area, and they were supposed to see each other or meet up around August 5th. Now, the first 2 days of this hike were going great, and they made better time than they thought they would. Now, on August 4th, however, the team was hit with this unexpected storm as they were beginning their descent. So they'd gone up, they're coming back down. Korovina made the decision to camp it out, start fresh when it was over. But they were out in the open, kind of exposed to the elements, because that's just where they were, I guess. So they decided to just camp out there.
Okay.
And they couldn't get a fire started because it was stormy.
Not good.
So they did successfully start a fire the next morning, though, and they were able to eat before moving on. So they're fine right now.
Okay.
So they got through the storm. They were like, okay, we got through the worst. Now, we only know what happened after this because there was a survivor of the incident. Nina Udachenko was the one survivor. She was 17. Now, her story, however, is pretty wild. When she was found, she didn't speak for several days. So it took some time for her version of events to kind of come out. A search was made August 24th, and the bodies of the other hikers were found using helicopters. When she finally did speak, Valentina explained that while they were coming down the mountain, somewhere near the altitude of about 2,396 meters, is about 7,861 feet up there, Alexander Kryson, not sure if that's how you say his name, who was at the back of the group, started screaming out in pain and horror. And when they looked to him, they saw he was bleeding from his eyes and his ears and was frothing at the mouth. She said that he fell to the ground, convulsing, and then went still. Their teacher and leader ran up to him to assess the situation and help him, but it was not long before she also started to scream and bleed from her eyes and ears before falling and convulsing there.
Bro, what?
Tatiana Filipinko had run to help Corvina, but she also collapsed after grabbing her throat as if she could not breathe or if like something was wrong there.
What?
Valentina said that instead of simply going unconscious like the others had, Tatiana crawled to a rock and beat her head into it until she was unconscious. Yeah. She then said that she witnessed Victoria Zarasova and Timur Bapanov run away in terror, but they did not get far when they collapsed, clawing at their throats and ripping their clothes off, like ripping at their clothes. They were also throwing up blood. Valentina then said that she and Denis Shavkin also ran, but Denis collapsed into convulsions shortly after. She kept running until she no longer could, and then she set up a tent under a tree and fell asleep.
Oh
my God. She slept for a while.
I'm thinking brain parasite immediately.
Really?
Yes.
That quick, though?
Yes. That's a psychotic. It's a neurological. Something's infected their brain. Something that only lives up there.
Yeah, a good movie.
Uh-huh.
Anyway. So, like all of them, though?
Yeah. They're both completely breaking from I can't remember the name of the disorder particularly, but I feel like there are parasites or infections, parasitic infections that cause horrible psychiatric breaks. I feel like I remember that somewhere.
But she's seeing this. They are dying. So why would that affect her? Why would it kill her?
I don't know.
So anyway, when she woke up hours later, she actually went back to where the group's bodies were, and she gathered supplies from their corpses because she had nothing, and she was still far away from civilization. So she had to choose, like, well, crap, what do I do?
She either gets supplies or she dies where she is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So she then spent the next 4 days following power lines down the mountain alone. I mean, she had to have been terrified. She just seen this crazy thing. Is this going to happen to me next? What I just, like, everybody I was just with is
just
dead.
To have the presence of mind is insane.
Yeah, she followed these power lines down the mountain by herself. She found a river and started following it until she came across a group of Ukrainian kayakers. They promptly took her to the police so she could tell them what had happened. Again, she didn't talk for some time, a couple of days at least. The authorities searching did find the bodies of her team after a few days of searching. The bodies of the deceased were noted to be only partially dressed, and with an autopsy, all of them were noted to have signs of bruised lungs. And the students were listed as having died of hypothermia, while the teacher, Corvina, was said to have died of a heart attack. All of them were also said to have protein deficiencies due to malnutrition, so this was also a factor listed. I mean, they were young. I don't know what they were eating on this trip or even before. No, I don't know. Now, some of the rescuers disputed the idea that they could have died of hypothermia, claiming that it would have been impossible for them to die of cold there. One actually suggested altitude sickness instead. This is a mild form of acute mountain sickness, or it's called acute mountain sickness. in which low amounts of oxygen are experienced really quickly, as when ascending higher altitudes, and symptoms of altitude sickness may include headaches, vomiting, tiredness, confusion, trouble sleeping, and dizziness. It usually occurs above 2,500 meters, 8,000 feet, but it can affect some lower than this, especially if inexperienced or dehydrated. Team was relatively experienced. I mean, the students had done some training. I don't know the extent. Corvino was definitely experienced, and they were descending and had been at higher elevations for a few days now. So I don't really know. Of course, I've never climbed a mountain. I don't know exactly how all that works, but um, also the symptoms that Valentina mentioned, bleeding from the eyes and ears, convulsing, grabbing at the throat, none of that really fits, apart from not being able to breathe being the reason for reaching for one's throat. I mean, unless somehow she hallucinated this, or this is what they're just kind of going with what her story is. Now, it's also possible that Valentina had become confused, or, like I said, hallucinated in whatever was happening and wasn't experiencing things correctly. But, like, why? And in that case, what did happen? Now, back to the idea of hypothermia for a second, because it had stormed the night before and they were not properly sheltered during that time. Perhaps they developed hypothermia because their clothes were wet, making them colder than they already were. Maybe they didn't. Like I'd mentioned before, you don't always realize when you're in that state, the stages of hypothermia, that kind of thing, all the time. Still, though, like their lack of apparel may have been from paradoxical undressing, like we mentioned with the Dyatlov team earlier, but they'd made a fire the next morning and ate some food and seemed fine before all of this happened. So it's not like they were moving about and they were with it enough to start a fire, and they would have warmed up a little bit and they would have eaten food, and it doesn't seem really right. Again, we're also going with the story we're being told, but I'm pretty sure they would have been able to find like where the fire had been. Like they've been able to see, what they had done before this a little bit. So yeah, they basically, they were fine before all this happened so suddenly. Now, one suggestion was a vitamin deficiency, and that Corvina was just irresponsible and starving her students. Latina denounced this idea. Latina believed that the deaths were a result of pulmonary edema, which can result from progressing altitude sickness. Also, I mean, a vitamin deficiency is not gonna, you don't get like lower than a little bit and then all of a sudden you're bleeding from your eyes. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't.
From the eyes and ears is what it makes me think something's up with the cerebral cavity.
And I know, like I've had patients with serious vitamin deficiencies that have gone into convulsions and stuff, but we're talking about like people who have chronic.
They're not climbing mountains,
right? Like it didn't just happen.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
So yeah, pulmonary edema is what Valentina believes. So technically, acute mountain sickness, as it's called, can progress to high altitude pulmonary edema with associated shortness of breath or high altitude cerebral edema, which is associated with confusion. So that could be
there it is.
part of that. But then again, why didn't it affect her? Is she just lucky?
Well, maybe she has a different I'm thinking of arteriovenous malformations, which are completely random, and not all of them are pathogenic or pathological. And so maybe she has a conformation to her skull, to her cerebral cavity, that actually protects her from cerebral edema. Maybe, maybe she has something in the order of like a reverse Arnold Chiari malformation, where her brainstem could actually sustain increased pressure temporarily.
I would think they would try to look for something like that in her to see. I don't know if they ever did, though. I don't know.
Any medical examiner worth their salt would. Here's what happened.
Well, yeah, because they would have been. They noticed that the lungs were bruised, but I don't think they were told anything about the brain. Like, I don't have details about.
Yeah, but we're talking. The pathology you just described, the pulmonary edema and cerebral edema. I mean, that's it for me. That's it.
Could be. So, yeah, like I said, she was fine somehow. And then there were other theories after this, including the infrasounds driving the team mad. We mentioned this a bit with the Dyatlov team as well. Now, infrasounds are a thing. They're of a lower frequency than us humans normally hear. And at least one study in 2003 has suggested that infrasounds may cause feelings of awe or fear in humans. It's more, it's also been suggested that since it's not consciously perceived, it may make people feel vaguely like odd or supernatural events are taking place. Like it's one of those, like something's making the hair stand up on I can't see it, or hear it, but I can somehow feel it.
You mean the spidey sense?
Sort of, but it's because it's a frequency, right? Sound waves are physical, but we can't see them.
Sure, they can provoke a visceral response.
So this, whatever this infrasound sort of thing is, could cause you to feel a little bit out of sorts, basically what they're saying.
Okay.
Still, it doesn't explain what she saw, Now, a psychologist at the University of Hertfordshire in southern England, Professor Richard Wiseman, stated, this was just some interesting stuff to do with infrasound, that I just thought was funny, or fun anyway, stated that some scientists have suggested that this level of sound may be present at some allegedly haunted sites, and so can cause people to have odd sensations that they attribute to a ghost. Our findings actually support these ideas. So they were writing this study up on infrasound and kind of what it does to people and animals. Like, do we feel it? Does it do anything to us? Because there'd been speculation before about certain things.
Sure.
Now, in this study, Lord and Wiseman played 4 contemporary pieces of live music, including some laced with infrasound, at a London concert hall, and asked the audience to describe their reactions to the music, which honestly, it comes with its own blind sort of study because you can't see it or hear that it's different. You know what I mean? The audience did not know which pieces included infrasound, but 22% reported more unusual experiences when it was present in the music. And honestly, some people are going to feel things differently than others too, probably.
Forgive me for asking, what's the definition of an infrasound? Like, what is it, a binaural sort of thing, or what is it?
It's low frequency. It's lower than we can hear.
Oh, infrasound, like below the auditory spectrum.
It's sound waves with frequencies below the threshold of human hearing.
Ooh.
Typically below 20 hertz. So yeah.
That's interesting, because the lower frequency a sound wave is, the more energy it actually has, the more potential it has to provoke a visceral response.
Well, also we've used sound waves, I believe, recently to help with kidney stones, things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, because it can.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because it can shake things up, move things around.
Mm-hmm. What is that? Cholelithiasis?
That's
nephrolithiasis.
Nephrolithiasis, because cholelithiasis, that would be gallstones, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, just thought that was interesting little tidbit of infrasound. They had some studies on it. So now infrasounds can be produced by natural meteorological incidents such as storms and such, but it could, but it's could it have led to these deaths? That really seems unlikely to me.
I still think team altitude sickness. Right over
here. Little bit of hair raising activity is different than death.
Yeah.
Right.
Hemorrhaging from your eyeballs? No, brother. You got pressure in the cerebral cavity that's pushing on your eyeballs.
Well, we're not finished with the theories, so.
Okay.
Me, I am a stickler for details. So there's actually a report titled "A Review of Published Research on Low Frequency Noise and Its Effects," and I thought you'd find this interesting, being a musician of sorts. Based on research done for UK's Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. In this report, it was noted that in 1972, French researcher P. Bourdon exposed 42 young men to tones at 7.5 hertz at 130 decibels for 50 minutes. This exposure caused no adverse effects other than reported drowsiness and a slight blood pressure increase. So
130 decibels is hot.
Now, in 1975, researchers Slarv, it's a fun name, and Johnson exposed 4 male subjects. Why only 4? I don't know. To infrasound at frequencies from 1 to 20 hertz for 8 minutes at a time at levels of up to 144 decibels SPL. There was no evidence of any detrimental effect other than middle ear discomfort, probably because things are.
Yeah, that's 1 hertz, 5 hertz. You talking about
That hurts.
bass?
Sorry. Now, tests of high-intensity infrasound on animals have actually resulted in measurable changes, such as cell changes, ruptured blood vessel walls. So, I mean, it is a thing, and it can actually be used for detection of, like, nuclear detonation and such. Like, it's been used in other areas. But like I said, I just don't think that this could kill anybody personally, kill these hikers. Infrasound wavelengths can be generated artificially, like through detonations and other human activity, or again, naturally from earthquakes, severe weather, lightning, and other sources. And the thing is, air has been seen as a very poor medium for it to affect humans in such a drastic way at all. Like, just isn't. So then we have the theory of military experiments. There's always going to be a theory of military experiments causing the deaths. Now, in this theory, the hikers were either killed as a result of the experiment or killed by those wanting it to remain a secret. This is not all that credible of a theory, however, because this area is very public, with a lot of people passing through. So it's like not exactly a great place for secret experiments, or like likely to be a secret experiment area. However, we're going to come to something in a minute that's going to be like, well, why did they do that there? Another theory, somewhat connected to that military experiment theory, is that they were exposed to nerve agents somehow. Apparently, there had been past testing with Novichok in areas near this region. Also, why in a public area? Whatever.
It's Russia.
Novichok. So I don't know how long ago, and Novichok was developed by the Soviet Union. So, and it has been one of, for a long time, was the deadliest nerve agent. It still is one of the deadliest nerve agents that we know of. So, and many of the symptoms reported by Valentina actually fit those caused by nerve agents: convulsions, frothing at the mouth, grabbing at the throat in pain, or inability to breathe. We've talked about nerve agents in a few episodes, really. It can cause respiratory distress, thereby showing signs of bruising to the lungs. It can cause cardiac arrest, as in Korovina's case. And again, Valentina may have just been lucky. She did sleep a long while, after which, under that tree, which, her body's experience with what little amounts she was exposed to could have done. Still, it's
okay, now I'm torn.
Yeah, like maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it does fit symptom-wise a lot. It's just like, where did it come from? Or was there a container there that had been forgotten about? Was this an accidental contamination left over by?
Right. And the Russian operations would never know, or there's no oversight. There's no,
Still, we don't know. Then there's the mushrooms theory. Corvina was known to forage, and she likely taught her students as well. But some say that maybe one of her students that she had been teaching collected some poisonous mushrooms. They had eaten breakfast that morning before heading out. Perhaps it was laced with said mushrooms, causing hallucinations and death in those who ate most of them, while rare, an overdose of muscarine and absinthic acid, most common in the amanita mushrooms, which we've talked about. Some amanita mushrooms can lead to psychosis, convulsions, cardiac arrest, and coma. Amanita phalloides, the death cap, which has been in the news a lot in Australia. I need to go see how that case is doing, actually. Amanita verosa, the destroying angel. I just love what these are called, like naming the mushrooms. It's like, didn't like what that one did. The destroying angel. They can actually look similar to other edible mushrooms when they're not fully matured. And I mean, they were young. I don't know. The latter two have been spreading throughout Europe, these mushrooms. Amanita muscaria, fly agaric, is known to grow in this region. But it's pretty easy to identify that mushroom, in my opinion. So
1.5 miles up, it grows up there.
That one can.
That's crazy.
Amanita muscaria. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
In certain, I'm certain in like certain months, I suppose. So unless someone just wanted to prank the others with Amanita muscaria, because like I said, it's pretty easy. That one's pretty easy to recognize. That's the one that looks like the toadstools in the Mario, like with the red.
Yeah.
For the most part. Unless, like I said, if somebody wanted to prank the others, like it is hallucinogenic, excuse me, and I just can't see them eating that one for breakfast. But what do I know? Finally, there's a theory surrounding the famed Lake Baikal. It is in southern Siberia, in Russia, between Irkutsk. Yes. So fun to say. And Buryatia, so very near to where the hikers were. It is the deepest lake in the world, by the way. Oh. Fun fact. Anyway, it's also very old. It's very old.
It's deeper than any of the Great Lakes in the States.
This is a very old lake.
How deep is it?
Lake Baikal, at its deepest. Lake Baikal, 5,387.
5,000. It's a mile deep. Wow.
For a lake, I mean.
That is a deep lake, brother.
Yeah, it is. God, it is double the depth of Lake Superior. It actually freezes over a lot too. People actually go and visit it a lot. It's actually it's a tourist attraction there. I mean, it's a very old lake. A lot of history behind it too.
Sounds like something white people would do.
I mean, I can get in it, but it's also known to be heavily polluted and has also dealt with toxic algae growth as a result. It's important to note that since 2010, more than 15,000 metric tons of toxic waste have flowed into that lake.
Yeah.
So
they don't flow out because it's a lake.
And now there's like streams, but it's just going to contaminate the streams too. Some have put forth that if the hikers drank from a stream carrying contaminated water from the lake, they may have been poisoned this way. I mean, which is an interesting, suggestion. It's just, but you'd have to prove that there is a stream coming that direction from that lake and test that water. And so it's just this, we don't know.
Okay.
Just another theory. So which one do you favor for that one?
I think I'm still with altitude sickness. I think so.
I was thinking either that or the nerve agents.
That's a close second because what we've learned.
Where did it come from? And they have used it before, according to some sources in that area.
What we've learned about, from Chernobyl and those situations, like the Russians don't.
Well, they're not going to divulge if that did.
No, they're not. There's no litigious society in Russia, so you can't sue the Russian government for a nuclear fallout or something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what. It's a close second for me, though. I don't know. Altitude, the cerebral edema still catching my attention the most.
I gave you a picture of the group and I think their location too, which you can just show for reference. But I mean, the poisonous mushroom one seemed interesting, but there again, you have to prove that they had those mushrooms, they ate those, and I would think they would find that in their stomachs,
Yeah.
So
pathology would figure that out.
Screen.
Is it the picture of the mountainside, like with their 6 faces?
Yeah, that's kind of. You got those. They all look so young. Yeah. And then I sent you a picture, I think, of their. It's basically just a picture of their route. Yeah.
Let me find it. There's Lake Baikal.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, this is where they would have been, basically.
Place where Valentina was found.
And so they were coming back down.
Wow.
So even with the altitude sickness thing, I don't know if there can be a delayed effect or not, but unless the pressure might have changed with that storm, I don't know. I don't climb mountains. I'm not that familiar with.
So their beginning and ending points are right there on Lake Baikal. See, now it's like 50-50 for me. It wouldn't be that hard to get poisoned by, because we've talked about waterways effects on I forget, we were looking at maps in a previous episode in Russia. about something similar. So anyways, yeah, that makes more sense now.
And it's not just Russia. I mean, Romania has a lot of toxic areas.
Yeah, sure. I mean, come on, Eastern Europe,
especially where there's been a lot of mining, anything like that.
That's
heavy
right.
metals. And
That's right. They've
such.
got how would you say it? They have economies, but they're not full grown, so to speak.
I mean, even here in America, we have the uranium mines out there where the Navajo Nation is.
Sure.
We tend to choose to ignore, which hopefully something's being done about that. I don't know. With everything changing and stuff this year, I don't know if that's still going ahead or not. I hope so, but I hope it gets dealt with, but we'll see. We'll see.
Should be.
I don't know. But those are the two cases I had for you today. I thought they were interesting. There's still a mystery, basically, that gets talked about. Like I said, there are theories that are more favored than others, but it's like we can't really know for sure. So I thought it'd be interesting to get your theory. And there were some theories of poison within these too. So it's like,
certainly, that's great stuff.
What could it have been?
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for this episode, folks. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.